I know we have a few that still will be joining, but please just get yourself settled and relaxed, and we look forward to spending the next hour with you. My name is Helen Arcantu. I'm the CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'd like to welcome you to today's Motherhood Uncensored event. And before we get started and jump in, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our daily work at the YWCA of Northern New Jersey, where we're focused on empowering women and girls with the tools that they need to learn and grow along their paths of success, advocating for the equality of all people, regardless of their age, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, income level, sexual orientation, or disability, and supporting survivors and those impacted by sexual violence, and raising awareness about our Healing Space program, which is Bergen County's only sexual violence resource center. We are so grateful that you could join us. We do all of that along with providing enrichment and services for children and peace of mind for families through our youth services, childcare and camps, and enhancing the health and well-being and self-confidence of people of all ages and abilities. As I shared, we're just thrilled to be able to have you join us for today's Motherhood Uncensored event. It is so important for us to take some time for ourselves as moms, and sometimes we actually have to schedule it. So happy to have this hour together. These events are designed to promote a safe place for working moms, for stay-at-home moms, to share advice, provide support on the daily challenges and issues that pop up for us in our motherhood caregiving roles. We here can discuss the pitfalls with each other and hopefully some practical takeaways to help us navigate some of the challenges and get through them in a way that helps support us better, for sure. Today we are making our self-care a priority. That's the goal of this hour, and we are doing it with a wonderful speaker who I had the opportunity to spend some time with earlier this week on YWTV. But before we jump into that, I'd like to take a moment to show you a short video that highlights our work at the YW. And so now it's time to jump right in. I am so excited to introduce you to today's speaker. Welcome, Mary Vidal. So happy to have you with us today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I want to tell our participants today a little bit about you. Mary is a personal trainer. She's also a yoga and self-massage instructor, a beauty counter consultant, and a women's self-care advocate. She is passionate about helping women feel better about their bodies, from the whole continuum from motherhood to menopause. Her specialty is teaching moms to restore their core pelvic floor through fitness and through daily movement. Her mission is to educate, empower, and inspire women to take charge of their self-care so that they can thrive in every phase of their life. In her free time, this Hoboken resident loves to hang out with her husband and her teenage sons, go hiking in the mountains of New Jersey and New York, sing with the Cantigas Women's Choir, I also, before we begin, want to make sure that you know that we will be allocating time for you to ask Mary some questions at the end of our conversation. You can feel free, though, to drop them into the Q&A section of Zoom as soon as they come into your mind. You don't have to wait. I know sometimes our mom brains, right, it can be a little tired and forget. So when you think of it, please feel free to drop it in. We'll be monitoring that Q&A section, and definitely include your questions as long as time can permit. Also, we have in the chat box at the end, we will be putting a survey for you. We do ask that you take a few moments to complete it and give us your feedback. We love to hear your thoughts on the event and your thoughts about other events so that we can make sure that we are planning opportunities and gatherings that are really meaningful for you. And so with that, let's jump back to Mary. Mary, so we had such a great conversation, kind of a little teaser on Monday where we talked kind of the light version of this much more in-depth conversation today. And so I'm looking forward to hearing more because you really, left me with a lot to think about when we talked. And, I think one of the things I want to start with is we know that taking care of ourselves as women is, we know it's important. I mean, obviously, we know that, but it's not always something, right, that we can figure out the time to do. And that's what our goal here today is to really help the moms that are joining us think about how to really, make this part of your daily being. So let's start with something that may seem obvious, but I think everyone looks at it a little bit differently. What and how do you describe self-care?
Sure. I mean, I always like to talk about, how I describe self-care because, as you said, people have an idea of what self-care is, and a lot of times I think what comes to mind is like taking a spa day, or getting away, or having a massage, something that's like very relaxing. But the idea of self-care, by the way, it's like a really high in the last 5 years on Google search. If you look at the stats, self-care has gone like through the roof in terms of searches. But the idea of self-care has been around for many decades, and it kind of started as a medical concept, but now it has like a really much broader meaning, and I like to take that broader meaning and a more holistic look at self-care. And for me, it encompasses really any action that improves or preserves our health and well-being. And I like to say preserving because we often think of improving our well-being, but like preserving is also really an important part of self-care. And I've recently found a wonderful organization called the International Self-Care Foundation that has the 7 pillars of self-care, but the way they've described it. And I want to walk through that kind of quickly because I think it's really it's very much in line with like what I call self-care. Their first pillar is called health literacy. And this idea of health literacy is it's so important because it's really the ability for individuals to get health information, right? Understand what that information means and to take action on it. And that can it's not just your medical health, but it can be your mental health, all these things. For women, there's often such a lack of information on how to care for ourselves, especially after we become mothers. I think it's a huge part of self-care is just like getting that information and processing it and acting upon it. It's a huge part of self-care. Pillar number 2 is mental well-being and self-literacy, similar to health literacy. Do the things that are good for our mental well-being, like taking time, downtime, alone time, mindfulness, relaxation, staying connected with friends and family, that kind of thing. But also, again, understanding our own bodies, our own needs, and making decisions on what we need based on our understanding. So it's a lot to do with like awareness and agency, right? And so that's pillar number 2. Number 3 is physical activity. Kind of doesn't really have to be explained, I don't think. We really need to get movement and exercise in our daily life. Number 4 is healthy eating. Same thing, pretty self-explanatory, but having a nutritious, balanced diet with like the appropriate level of calorie intake, not too little and not too much. I really love pillar number 5, which is risk avoidance or mitigation. And for me, that's actually setting boundaries, right? And whether that be physical, like limiting alcohol intake, or it could be things like using sunscreen or getting vaccinated, right? That's a preventative thing. But it can also be like a mental thing, limiting social media intake or news consumption, right? And maybe even like our boundaries of not overscheduling ourselves. Um, right. So, and on the social end, it can be things like ending toxic relationships, right? Not getting into places socially that, aren't good for us. So risk avoidance or risk mitigation. Number 6 sounds kind of funny and obvious, but good hygiene is really important to self-care. And I had to think about this because as I was reading it, but what comes to mind to me is new moms. New moms, how many times do they tell me, I don't know when the last time I took a shower? And I know in COVID, a lot of people were in that place too. It's so important to do things like hygiene. Take a shower, wash your hair. You'll feel so much better, right? So that is a good, important part of healthcare. And pillar number 7 is the rational and responsible use of products, services, diagnostics, and medicine. So all the things that contribute to our health, whether it be seeing a doctor, taking medicines as needed, seeing a therapist, all the things, acupuncture, chiropractor, there's so many things we can do from that standpoint, but it's how to find the right balance for ourselves to really take care of our individual needs. And so those are the 7 pillars, and I really like that model. The only thing that I feel like I would add into that is intellectual self-care, keeping yourself intellectually challenged and stimulated, doing puzzles, reading, that kind of thing. Our spiritual self-care, doing things that are good for our soul, whether you're religious or not, things that bring you joy, right? And also social, keeping our relationships healthy. Those are all things that I think contribute to our overall self-care. So a lot more than just like taking a day off, right? And that's my view of holistic self-care.
I have to say that is obviously an extensive list, but I love it because I do think that self-care gets a rap of being a spa day. And then we somehow feel like if we do somehow make time for that spa day and we don't feel better, you feel so lost, like, well, that didn't work, but what you just shared just shows the depth and the breadth of all the different places and spaces we need to be thinking to truly embrace the concept. And I have to say, I mean, it's I think for moms, and especially new moms, we get overwhelmed with thinking about how do we make the time to do this. But as I'm listening to you talk about it in that really in-depth way, it really is a way of life, right? And so if you shift your way of life into those, pillars, into those areas, then you don't have to make time for it. It's just how you're operating, which I love that kind of shift in mindset if you really, can embrace it and make the shifts and changes. So tell us why, I mean, this is important for everyone. I mean, look, we know it's important for everyone, but we chose to really focus with our Motherhood Uncensored program today to talk about moms. And you yourself in your work have really chosen to focus work, with women and, motherhood stages. Tell us why it's important to have that focus.
Well, I think if you're a mom, like mom is always at the bottom of the list, right? We tend to most of the time, we tend to put ourselves last ahead of all the other people we're caring for, whether it be our children, our partners, our pets, our parents, right? There's so many priorities. And it's really easy, if you are a nurturer, caretaker person, to not take care of yourself, which doesn't help the people that you are trying to care for, right? And so you go back to the kind of cliche now, but like on the airplane, put your mask on first. Don't pour you can't pour from an empty cup. All those sayings, but they're so true. And we really can't take um, be fully present with the people that we're trying to care for if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not healthy ourselves, if we're not happy ourselves. Like I love the quote I see all the time, like a happy mom is a happy family. Taking care of yourself first, and that's going to impact everybody around you. So when we practice self-care, it just allows us to show up more fully for the people we work with, in our families, and in everywhere in our lives.
So when we're talking about making that kind of mindset shift in terms of how we live our lives, because again, what you described was just so fully a way of life, and decisions. And I know you yourself personally went through kind of a evolution, if you will, of really embracing, and I know this because we talked a little bit on Monday, in terms of YWTV, about what you personally went through as a mom, and, some of your life challenges as well, that really made you embrace a way of life that, to me, sounds like it really encompasses all those pillars, you just talked about. What does that look like for those of us who aren't there yet? And I'm, in that group, how do you start to make those changes, to be able to, why is it so important for us to do it? And how do you start to make those changes to get there?
Sure. Well, for me, it didn't happen overnight, for sure. And I feel like that becoming a mother is really a kicking off point for self-care, because oftentimes, and I'm sure many of you will know this, we don't do anything until there's a crisis, right? Or until there's some sort of pain threshold passed, right? Where we say, okay, I need to do something. And sort of that's kind of what kicked me off on this path. I mean, I've always been sort of like a healthy person, into fitness, but like once I became a mom, it just, like, my eyes were open, like, whoa, there's so many things in my body that I didn't know how to recover from and how to handle. And it just really got me on this path. But then it's been a journey. It's I kind of took literally baby steps, just like when you watch your child grow and they go from not being able to move to crawling to walking to doing all these things. It's the same thing. It takes, it can take a lifetime. I mean, my oldest is 18, and I feel like the past 18 years I've been honing and refining, and every phase of life has given me another opportunity to grow more, learn more. I mentioned this on Monday as well. After I had my children and I was dealing with pelvic health issues and core issues, I figured out how to navigate that. And then I entered perimenopause, and I had, things that, it was just every obstacle kind of gave me another chance to, well, let me learn more about my body and how I can, improve my overall health. And I went from that to breast cancer to menopause. So, all these things is just, I see them as opportunities, right? And I think, again, it goes back to what you were saying before. It really is about mindset. How can we start living in a way that is caring for ourselves?
I have to say, I appreciate you talking about kind of the evolution that happened over time, because I do think, especially, being moms, we're so used to having to do everything so fast, and be so responsive that, sometimes that's what makes us feel like a failure in this category of not being able to attain self-care or some kind of motherhood bliss, because, it doesn't come easily, and that, that can be frustrating.
And really, also, I like to use the hashtag, it's progress, not perfection,
Mm.
right? It's all about the progress. Are you moving forward? Doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And that's so important, because I don't, I don't want us to feel like failures, right? Because again, if you go for that massage, because everyone says, oh my God, go to X spa, it's the best, go to this person, she's the best, you're going to come out of there feeling wonderful. And then you just don't, and then you feel like, wow, there's really nothing that's going to help me feel better. And you start to feel hopeless about it. So we really want to change that mindset that there's like one thing, right? That's really going to like be the magic pill for us.
No, there is no magic pill. That's one of my other sayings. There really is no magic pill. It's all the things that we do. And as you said before, um, the superficial things, which are important as well. I mean, I love getting massages. I love, just having a cup of tea or, looking at the flowers. But then we also have to do that deeper self-care. And it's doing those things in conjunction with each other that's really going to make you feel better. But you can't just expect that superficial, it's like a Band-Aid, right? To solve all your problems. You have to go and from the bottom up and really take care of, some of the deeper issues. And that's hard. That can be a lot of work and it can take time. It's not it's not something you go get an appointment and it's done.
Right.
It takes a lot of effort. Yeah.
So before we start talking strategies and so forth, I just want to kind of revisit, which, may or may not be obvious, but I want to revisit the myths that are out there.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I, sometimes we really, and I love how you kept talking about literacy, in the pillars too, because, sometimes those myths, if, you really start to believe them, or you do believe them without even realizing, that they're myths. And I think before we can talk about strategies, we really have to figure out what we need to let go, so that they don't limit us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like you hit the nail right on the head. All these beliefs are limiting and they prevent us from doing the self-care things that we need to do. I mean, the number one myth, right, is that it's selfish or self-indulgent and something to feel guilty about. And there is nothing selfish about taking care of yourself for all the reasons that we already discussed. So it is not only not selfish, it's necessary, right? So that's the number one thing. For some people, they say, oh, well, this particular thing of self-care that is always talked about, like say meditation, it's not for me, and because you don't resonate with some common self-care practices, maybe meditation or yoga, some people think maybe it's only for women or only for flexible people or only for it doesn't matter. Self-care looks different for every person. So if meditation and yoga are good for some people, great, but if it doesn't work for you and you have something else, it's about finding the thing that works for you as an individual. So I think we get a lot of messages of like, you have to meditate if you want to be, healthy, mentally healthy. And it doesn't work for some people, that version of like meditation that people talk about. So I like to put that out there because I think it kind of, again, lets people off the hook. Like, I don't have to do this particular thing. And the other myth that, I mean, we sort of talked about this too, is that self-care is something that's soothing. And while it can be calming and soothing, taking a bath, getting massage, all these things, we want to be careful too about minimizing, was in the risk mitigation area, self-soothing, right? Like binge watching, right? On our whatever, Netflix, at any show, self-soothing, drinking, playing games, shopping, eating, all those things, soothing, it's again within a balance, right? So it should be things that support your overall health and wellness, and it shouldn't be something that's like addictive or harmful to your health. And a lot of people I know, especially through the pandemic, got through by self-soothing with alcohol. It's a very common thing for people to get together, but that is really not self-care. I think it was necessary for a point in time. Don't get me wrong. I don't think you shouldn't drink alcohol, but it's that balance, creating the balance in your life. But also it can involve doing things that are challenging or scary, right? Like going to the doctor. I know I I get my mammogram. I had breast cancer. I was before that getting it on a regular basis as prescribed by my doctor. But those things are scary for a lot of people. Seeing a therapist, super scary if you've never done it. But it's so important for your well-being. If you have some challenges with your mental health, we talked about ending relationships that aren't healthy for you, all these things. It can also be saying no. Hey, moms, right? We don't like to say no. We're people pleasers. That's hard for a lot of us to say. We're always asked, things are being asked of us, and like just saying no is so challenging, but that is an act of self-care, right? So I think that, and also saying yes to things that put us out of our comfort zone. But that's where we grow, right? That's really where, when we're challenged, that we can flourish. So those are some of the myths. Oh, and last but not least, I like to say that one of the myths is that self-care is time consuming. And we talked a little bit about, like, there are all these levels of self-care. So there are some things that yes, are absolutely time consuming, but they don't have to be. So there are a lot of little things we can do to improve our overall well-being that don't take a lot of time. And especially as moms, we're super busy. There are definitely ways that we can incorporate little things every day so that we feel better, overall.
Well, I appreciate you running through all those. And although I think, some of them we may have known, it's really good to be reminded of them for sure. And some of them, it's important to hear. I mean, you talking about the binging of Netflix and, girls' night out, if you're the, glass of wine at the end of the night. And I know there's a lot of that kind of shopping therapy, retail therapy that happens, with the Amazon packages, et cetera, that, it is so important. And you really kind of shed a light on the fact that although they may end up being coping mechanisms for our stress, that they really can be hurtful and harmful, to us at the same time. And so having an outlet that's reflective, like therapy or meditation, if that works for you or whatever it is really, really important and helpful, to be able to distinguish what is helping you and what is hurting you and what is self-care and what is, really, something that is problematic, and helping you discern the difference. So that's great. For those of you with us today, I'd love for you to drop in the chat, you know, uh, where you are in your momhood. It's so, it definitely is, great way. Feel free to put your name in, if you want, or tell us a little bit about, who you have at home that you're mothering. I know one of the great conversations that we were having earlier in the week on YWTV, Mary and I were really, whatever age and stage your kids are at, it's so important, and it evolves what you need, So I appreciate everyone sharing. I know I have 9-year-old twins and a year-old puppy, which, as I was saying, is almost more challenging sometimes than the kids right now. The 4-legged baby. And I know that, Mary had shared that she's got, teen sons. So, and thanks, Jill. I see you've got some teen daughters, and looks like in early 20s, Jill. Thank you for sharing. And anyone else, please feel free to drop in. So we're going to shift and have Mary help us. I know, and again, I encourage all of you to be connecting with Mary. You can do that on her social media. She's got an Instagram account, where you can just, see, what she's sharing and pushing out there in terms of, self-care and focus for moms. Thanks, Dana. I see you're dropping in. I know your crew as well in here. Tell us a little bit about some exercises. I mean, we've talked about what we should be doing, and we talked about what we shouldn't be believing, right? So we've kind of gotten those covers. What are some action items? Tell us a little bit about some exercises, and some, things that we can concretely do. to start moving into that self-care realm and restructuring, our lives so it's set up that way.
Sure. So I'd like to give like very short exercises, and we talked about, especially when you have younger kids, like not having a lot long stretches of time to do things. So, and also starting in baby steps is a really good way to incorporate self-care into your life. So I'm gonna do 3 different types of exercises, but my number one thing for self-care always is breathing. And I know a lot of people like get anxious when you mention breathing, but it really is true, and there's ways to kind of get around that as well. But I just want to talk a little bit about why. I mean, breathing just does not just give us oxygen. There's many ways to breathe. Actually, it's an autonomic function in the body. Means we don't have to think about it and it happens. But it's also a function that we can control. So when we intentionally control our breathing, we can do it for specific outcomes, right? So breathing in different ways we can do it to stimulate our system. We can do it to calm down our system. We can do it to balance our system. So it is super powerful. And when we breathe well, it also massages our internal organs. It's healthy for our core and pelvic floor, which is my specialty. It's like one of the places I start when I'm working on core and pelvic floor recovery. So it's super important. So I just want to do a simple breathing exercise. And this is going to be more for calming or relaxation. So when we're doing a calming breath, we always want to make our exhale longer than our inhale. And why is that? When we exhale, it is more soothing to the nervous system. It down trains the nervous system, and it invokes our parasympathetic response, our relaxation response, right? So a longer exhale than our inhale. So it's super simple, and it's something you could do. I always like to say, just take 3 breaths, right? And usually I say breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. But you could breathe. It's allergy season, so whatever. I encourage you to go along with me, but if you can't breathe through your nose, it's fine if you're breathing through your mouth. So first things first, if you're following along, you're going to want to sit up nice and tall. So we can't take a deep breath when we're slouching. So if you can, sit up on your sitting bones, and also ground your feet into the ground so you're firmly planted. And you can take one hand on your chest if you want, one hand on your belly. And when we're breathing in this way, you want to think about allowing your body to expand like a balloon, not just in your chest, right, where we tend to take a breath, but into our ribs, our belly, our back, like allowing our whole body to expand. So we're going to take an inhale, and I'm going to do a count of 3 on the inhale and 6 on the exhale, right? So let's go ahead and breathe in for 1, 2, 3, and then exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and expand for 2, 3, and contract 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And one more time, deep breath in, fully expand, 2, 3, and then exhale for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And just relax. And literally, that takes about a minute, maybe a little bit less. But I don't know if you notice, literally taking 3 breaths can bring your nervous system way down, especially when you're allowing your whole body to expand. So we're not taking this like chest breath, whole body breathing. What do you think?
I coming back on the screen in a minute. I have to say, I immediately felt better and just getting more air and oxygen, into my body. And I'm hoping others, were in a place where they were able to do it as well. I'd love to hear how anyone else felt. Feel free to drop it in the chat if you had the opportunity to do it. It is amazing. And it's also, first of all, I'm always so surprised that I forget to breathe. It just seems like it's so obvious, right? And I feel like we think we're doing it constantly, so we don't have to actively do it. But when you do have a moment and you do take a moment to do an exercise like this, it really it reminds you how powerful it is to intentionally be focused on your breathing, and probably even more powerful to do it proactively as opposed to reactively, which is for me probably more when I do a breathing exercise like this. It is much more like reactive, like I'm suddenly feeling a little overwhelmed and I stop myself and try to do it, which is I usually feel like is a win when I remember that. But I can imagine how powerful it is if you're just doing it regularly.
Yes, that's a really great point. I mean, again, it's about prevention, right? Preventing ourselves. It's much easier to do that prevention and not have to recover from being like overextended than it is to get to that point and have to backtrack, right? Because actually our nervous system can go like from 0 to 60, right? In literally at 1 second. Any triggering event happens and we're there in that moment of stress. But it actually takes the nervous system about 20 minutes to fully relax. So, if you can avoid getting to that place where you're overstimulated or overstressed, it's better. So yes, practicing breathing on a regular basis, even when you're feeling good, is a wonderful thing.
So I noticed, it's funny, I'm just wondering from a perspective of how to integrate it proactively just to get your input. And also, maybe this would be something the others, would be interested in as well. So when would we drop it in? Is it something we should be doing first thing in the morning when we wake up? Should we be, I know my Apple Watch, sometimes I think my Apple Watch is my best friend because it reminds me to drink water. It reminds me to breathe. It reminds me to, meditate. It tells me all the things I should be doing, eat, it has different alarms on it. Um, and one of the apps does kind of do a little like take a moment and breathe, on it. I'm probably embarrassed to say I shut it off more than I do it. But it does it. So how often should we be breathing proactively, intentionally, other than just our general breath, in our day? And when and how should we, would you recommend we think about integrating it?
Well, I think it kind of depends on what your day looks like, right, and what you're doing throughout the day. But a great place to take a breath is when you're transitioning between activities or between meetings, right? Or if you're in a long stretch of work, right, where you're sitting for 2 hours straight, whatever it is, schedule in. I love. I mean, we're getting to this in the strategies, but I can definitely talk about it now. It's just like any tool that works for you. So if it's your watch, I know I'm totally guilty of like, oh, snooze, I'm not going to do that right now. But there is a little bit of that accountability and like guilt factor in there. It's like, oh yeah, you should be doing this. If you find yourself like dismissing all your reminders like all the time, then obviously it's not effective. So it's finding the things that kind of work for you. But I definitely think it's really important in the transition moments. Oh, you're going to pick up your kids, right? Right before because the energy totally shifts, right? It doesn't matter how old your kids are. Like I have these 2 teenagers, and there's a whole shift in energy when they come in or when they leave, right? So anytime you have that transition from one thing to another, it's a great time to just pause, take a breath, tune in, see how you're feeling. I love that.
I love that idea of, right, like the pickup line, right? As you're like, waiting to go in, that you definitely make a time for it there. That's great. So, you mentioned strategies. Is there any other exercise you want to do for us, or do you want to move into strategies? I know as it happens, the time passes quickly when we're chatting. I know we're already, 20 to closing. So let me know if you want to jump next.
I'll do one more thing. So one of the things that I teach is self massage. I teach self massage primarily with massage therapy balls. Actually, let's show you like little balls. Can you see? Oh yeah, I got to put it in front of me. Like this that I teach people how to use, which I love, love, love. But since nobody has a ball probably handy while they're watching this, I also teach self massage with just your hands. And just like getting a massage, when you go out, you can do it yourself, and it's really impactful. So I like to do a face massage, right? So if you want to join me, like when we get stressed out, or like a head massage, right? Right by the temples, you just take like the 3 fingers and massage your temples. And so you're going to do like gentle circles. And while you're doing this, you can take deep breaths. Breathe. And then you can move down to your jaw, because our jaw is where we tend to clench up, right? Massage like in between the jaw bones, and open and close the jaw. Right. And then so many people lately are telling me that their neck is in pain or tight, and they're getting tension headaches. So I like to just take my hands like this and give myself like a little neck massage, just like literally dragging the skin forward, go by the base of the spine and pull, and just see how that feels. And then work your fingers up to the between the base of the skull and the neck, and just like massage in circles there. And then come around and do the front of the neck. I like doing this too. This is nice because we get all tight in our neck and our shoulders. Relax the jaw and breathe. Yeah. And that's it. Literally takes a couple minutes, but it can be really, really relaxing.
That's so great. I just did it all. How many of you were doing it too, where you're sitting? Anyone else doing it? That was, it is amazing. Again, it's something so simple, but it really does relax your whole, your whole face. And my neck, just from that little bit of, focused movement, is great. I know I've been seeing a lot of, I don't know, those of you on too, you're always seeing these like these rollers, these face rollers, or these gua sha, I think it's called, and I always look at them like, wow, that looks like it would be relaxing too, but I'm always worried that I'll do it wrong and hurt myself, or create some line that will never go away. I don't know if anyone else has those fears with those kind of products, but I'm guessing those are all similar kind of self-care, intentional focus that, really relaxes your face muscles.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I've had it on my list to get one of those tools, because I have a closet full of self massage things, but I don't have one of those. So I'm gonna have to do that. But definitely the face is tied into, especially like along here, the vagus nerve, which is helps invoke your relaxation response. So when you're massaging this area, it is really relaxing. That's why facials feel so good.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. That's great. And if we have time, we should go back and talk about the vagus nerve, because that's something that no one really talks about enough, right? That it is like that is like a center point for relaxation. Yeah. So for those of you, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in. And while you're, thinking about them and doing that, maybe let's talk a little bit about strategy. We talked about really, it's a lifestyle change. And even with these, really two simple exercises you just showed us, I mean, anyone has time in their day to do them, and to do them a few times, to really, and that will have an impact. But give us some strategies. How can we make this kind of culture shift in our own lives, that ultimately, and I want to say this to the moms, right? We think about how we really are the epicenter for the family. Just think about this, because sometimes it's hard for us to do things only for ourselves, and it shouldn't be. But if you do this properly, you're modeling this for your kids, and then they will grow up really much more focused and better balanced. And it's like a gift that you can give them by taking it on properly for yourself. So keep that in mind as why it should be on your list too.
Yes, I love that. I definitely model for my kids, and as much as I can, I get them to do things with me. Sometimes they're just too cool for that, but that's okay. So, I mean, number one, we talked about this a little bit already. Start small, right? Just like don't get overwhelmed by like, I'm not going to do this right, or I'm not going to be able to have enough time. Start with little things. The other thing I like to say is build a self-care toolbox. So whatever like resonates with you, or whatever feels really good for you, whatever works, right? Make a list, or a mental list, or write it down, whatever, but have a list of things that you can do and go back to on a regular basis. And try things like, so you might not realize that you resonate with something until you try it. So give it a go, or maybe you hated it at one point and you go back and then it works. So we are always evolving. So, but building your toolbox, and the bigger the toolbox, the better, is what I like to say. We talked a little bit too about using accountability tools. Super important. I think it's very helpful. It can be very helpful. Um, Apps. There are apps that tracking apps. Um, Obviously, you can hire somebody to to be your accountability. Actually, you can have an accountability partner, right? Or you can hire someone to keep you accountable. But any sort of accountability tool is really great. Having a partner do something with you is really awesome, because it just feels good, and you're doing it together, and it's free. So I like that. I don't know if you've ever heard of Atomic Habits. Um, it's a book written by James Clear, and he talks all about, so it's atoms being small, right? Making little changes. And one of the things he talks about is habit stacking. So adding a new activity that you want to incorporate into your life, and pairing it with something that you're already doing, right? So when you habit stack, it increases the likelihood you're going to stick with that, because it's tied to one you're already doing. So for instance, after I leave a Zoom meeting, I will take a breath for 1 minute, breathe for 1 minute. When I pour my cup of coffee, I will, read for 10 minutes, something like that. Taking your activities and putting them together so that it becomes a natural part of your schedule. And you mentioned, I'm going to pick up my kids, then I'm going to do this, or maybe after I finish breakfast, I'm going to take a walk. All those things, you can tie it, and that's how it really becomes integrated into your daily life, right? When you tie it with things. When it comes to bigger things like health care, like I try to, a lot of people do this too, try to do their doctor's visits around like their birthday, or where it's on a schedule. So those are really important. And really the last thing I just say is just to be consistent. Even if it's a little bit, do a little bit every day. And once you make it a habit, do it regularly, it just becomes so much easier. And you feel the benefits. And then when you stop, you're like, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. I don't feel good. I can.
I was gonna say, I love and I want to thank Alicia. By the way, I want to thank Alicia because she organized this whole event today, and shout her out. But I also want to thank her because she dropped in the chat for everyone the James Clear book, Atomic Habits, in case you want to check it out. But I love the concept of habit stacking, and kind of, tying them together so that there's a better likelihood of, getting it done and added in your day. That's such a great strategy. And again, something, easy and doable, which is what I love about so much of what we talked about today. From when you started with your pillars to, your exercises and these strategies. I mean, they're really, it all seems attainable. It all seems attainable. And I really appreciate that this was so much more of a conversation about, how deep rooted, and, this change can be, and yet making that shift doesn't have to be so overwhelming that it can't happen. Because I do think that sometimes it feels hard, to get any of this done, for sure. Again, folks, if you have any questions, I know, Mary's doing such a great job at sharing everything in detail. I don't know that a lot of questions are popping into everybody's mind. But you did mention and I don't know if I'm going to say it right, the vagus nerve or vagus nerve,
Vagus nerve.
vagus nerve. And I don't know, those of you on, are you familiar with the vagus nerve? When I say recently, I'd say in the last, year or so, kind of got introduced to to it a little bit. Yeah, Jill's heard of it. But maybe people haven't. Could you tell us a little bit about, it and, what, how it interplays into this whole concept of self-care and relaxation and wellness?
Sure. So the vagus nerve is getting a lot of attention lately, probably in the last few years. But it starts from the base of the skull, and it's called the wandering nerve because it goes from the face to into the lungs, breath, hello, and down into our gut, right? So it's really, we talk about like our gut feeling, butterflies in the stomach and everything. It's our vagus nerve is in tied into our gut as well. So there's a lot of things we can do when the vagus nerve affects your parasympathetic nervous system when it's activated, right? So there's a lot of things that we can do to stimulate the vagus nerve. One of them is being breathing, as we talked about, because when we're moving the parts that are attached to or connected to the vagus nerve, which are a lot of pieces of our body. So just moving is great, but massage, the self-massage, the breathing, it also runs into like our vocal cords. So I know a lot of moms, I love that the name of this is called Motherhood Uncensored, because we're talking about things that don't get discussed. But from a vagus nerve standpoint, like I think a lot of moms, we don't say things that we need to say. We bite our tongue. We don't talk about all the things that, we're dealing with, kind of like we say, oh, this is just part of being a mom. Vocalization is really great for stimulating the vagus nerve. So that can just be talking, but it can be humming, singing, gargling actually is really funny. But anything that's really vibrating, right, this area. So singing in the shower. I sing in this women's choir, but it is so, that's why singing feels good. It's also, by the way, a longer exhale than inhale, right? Because you take a breath in and then you sing, you hold a note, and it's a long exhale. It's all very stimulating. And the other thing I'll say too that you could do to invoke your vagus nerve is to get down on the ground. That's like actually one of the fastest ways to calm your nervous system. Lay down on the ground and elevate your legs. Either on a chair or against the wall, and that ties into your vagus nerve as well.
Thank you for explaining that. Again, I don't know if everyone knew all those points, but as I said, got introduced to it not so long ago, in the years of my life, in looking at it in that lens. And it is amazing once you kind of understand the science behind some of this. It does all make a significant amount of sense, and then I think it also makes it easier to figure out to integrate it too, because of that piece. So that's really, really helpful. And knowing even another great simple strategy, laying down on the ground and elevating your feet. Thank you for sharing that one too. That's another real easy one that we can all embrace.
And I'll just add to that actually, because we talked a little bit on Monday about like sneaky fitness, sneaky self-care. I'll call this sneaky self-care because I would do this with my kids at bedtime, story time. We would get on the floor and put our feet on the bed. So if you want to get them in bed quickly, right, and they're younger, do story time on the ground with legs up.
That's brilliant.
I call it upside down reading.
I love that. I know I've got 9-year-olds, but they read on their own more now. But I'm going to see if I could get them to consider that. That's wonderful, wonderful. And I love Jill saying she likes your sneaky, your kind of sneaky comment. She says she calls it microdosing movement, which I like that too. That's a great alliteration there also. And easy to It doesn't all have to be so difficult, but we really can make positive shifts and do them in stages for sure. And I really appreciate you sharing your journey in doing this. And I know, even when we talked on Monday, you talked a little bit and, introduced your own wellness journey and, navigating breast cancer and motherhood and other pieces. And the reality of it is, every day something else comes our way, when you're in this category of mom. And, whether it has, being a caregiver is literally every day a new adventure because you don't know, what's ahead. But having a strong plan in place for your wellness and your self-care definitely grounds you, keeps you strong for yourself and keeps you strong for the others, that you've signed on to be there for sure. Mary, thank you so much for all these really, concrete, simple strategies and just a lovely way to think about things that is not overwhelming. I also just find you so relaxing to talk to.
Oh.
You're such a gentle, calming presence, and I appreciate. I felt that way on Monday, and same today. I really, just appreciate, you sharing your, the space with us and allowing us to gather some moms, to learn a little bit and take time. And, again, whether it's something new or something that we're reminded of is nonetheless all we need for it to be powerful and impactful to, make a positive change. And, even I thank all of you who shared a little bit, in our chat here today too. It's wonderful to always know that we're not alone, and that there are others, living in, and looking at the different ages of the moms here too, that it is, this is life stages. Motherhood is one of those, obviously it's a marathon job, and so there's different stages that go with it and different, phases to embrace with that. So with that, we've learned a lot today that we can take from here. We do encourage everyone to stay connected to Mary through her Instagram. We have that link here. We also have the survey we mentioned here for you. We would appreciate it if you could take that survey. Again, give us feedback so that we can continue to bring you relevant conversations to help strengthen your lives, which is what our goal is. Mom burnout is a thing. And, clearly there are some proactive things. And even if some of them are reactive because you're in a spot, there's clearly some great changes that we can make that are simple and attainable and doable and, incremental, that can really build up into a healthier, better place. So even if it's just 10 minutes a day to, attribute to making some of the changes or doing some of the great strategies that Mary shared, like even now when you get off your Zoom meeting, doing a good breath. If you're hopping to a car pickup, not so long from now, do another one there. Do the self massage later tonight, wherever you can, lay down on the floor, lift your legs, and incorporate some of these strategies. It's really going to benefit you and benefit everyone else in your life as well, for sure. Any last thought, Mary, before we sign off today?
I just want to say thank you so much for creating this space to have this discussion and other discussions for women. I think this is the biggest thing, is just having the conversation and sharing the information. So I thank you for having me today. Really appreciate it.
Well, I thank you, as I said, and I appreciate you saying that. We learned a long time ago that the circles are everything, and whether it's a circle of women or circle of women you just met, they can be equally as powerful. In terms of just being able to look at something a little bit differently and hopefully create some positive shift or energy in a place that you really needed it. So this is where our power source is, the circle, as far as I'm concerned. So this is this is another, it's not always the size, it's just whoever shows up, there's something to take from it for sure. We have lots of other great opportunities to stay connected at the YW. We hope that you are following us on social media, that you're checking into, signed up for our e-blasts, so you can be connected to other initiatives and programs, everything from summer camp, because we're getting into that season as well, to our business We360 Essentials program to help you start or support your small business. That program is free of charge, and it's on site, virtual, but a great opportunity for learning. Our summer camp is affordable and, something for everyone, really works around your schedules. You don't have to buy the whole summer. You can buy week to week. We encourage you to check that out. And lots of great programs for our girls, including on June 21st, kicking off our Serious About STEM program for our SAS girls, as we call them, and so much more. So stay connected to us for that. We will see you again soon for another event. And we really, really want to thank everyone who made the time for themselves today. It's so, so important. Now, remember, when you get off here, when we hit end for all and all leave each other, take a good breath and do another little face massage. That's what I recommend. That's what I'm going to do. Mary, thank you again. Everyone, thank you for joining us, and everyone have a great day. Feel good.
Thank you. Bye.